It was just last month that a theme went viral on the social media platform TikTok, leading to widespread damage in schools across the country. Known as the Devious Licks Challenge, it has encouraged students to record a video of themselves stealing or vandalizing school property. Everything from bathroom soap dispensers and exit signs to fire extinguishers, and amounting to untold thousands of dollars worth of damage, and then posting the video on TikTok.
Reports that Meta collaborated with a Republican consulting firm to manipulate the public away from TikTok is raising antitrust concerns. I'm Yasmin with Rebel HQ, and today we're talking about tech giants. So I think people will generally agree that Mark Zuckerberg is not the most likable guy. He tends to find himself, or rather put himself, in alignment with these interests that are actually going against the people that he capitalizes on. So in one of his more recent endeavors, Meta partnered with a conservative consulting firm called Targeted Victory. Targeted Victory launched a campaign that was essentially astroturfing against Meta's biggest competitor, TikTok. The campaign artificially created viral TikTok content that was destructive or abusive or otherwise harmful in an effort to convince people that TikTok is a bad place, and if we let it proliferate in the United States, we'll only get more and more of these really dangerous trends coming about. Obvious irony aside, the campaign argued that the US wouldn't want the Chinese government to have access to American data, which in and of itself isn't the worst argument that they could have made. But Zuck is clearly worried about his own business interests, and he doesn't want to lose any more young users to TikTok. According to Pew Research, 94% of teens said that they were on Facebook in 2012. But in 2021, not even 10 years later, only 27% of them said that they were on Facebook. Instagram even rolled out its own version of TikTok in an effort to keep people on IG instead of letting them go over to TikTok. So theoretically, the types of TikTok content that Meta was trying to warn people about with this whole campaign could just as easily be created on Reels now anyway. An article from the Daily Dot suggested that the Republican-led campaign was designed in an attempt to get Congress to intervene against TikTok, all of which was part of a bigger attempt to monopolize the market. So which is it? Does government have a place in big business, or does it not? So the question becomes, can you have your cake and eat it too? Antitrust laws have an unstable history in the US because while we've got them on the books, their enforcement tends to fluctuate depending on what the economy is doing and what the political climate looks like at any given moment. Originally, antitrust laws were targeted to lower the barriers of entry for smaller companies, allowing them space in the growing market economy and also preventing industries from monopolizing. I'm sure you know about Rockefeller and how the government had to step in to bust up Standard Oil. By the early 20th century, Rockefeller had consolidated so much of the oil industry that he had consolidated his own power over not just the industry, but also over the people he was serving, to the point that the government had to step in. By the 1930s and 40s, the US was dealing with rising fascism and communism out of Germany, and according to our then Secretary of War, monopolies were the catalyst for all of that. He said monopolies soon got control of Germany, brought Hitler to power, and forced virtually the whole world into war. The idea that came from Germany was that we needed a competitive and diverse economy in order to stave off fascism and prevent any non-democratic consolidations of power. So the government busted up AT&T, but by the 1950s and 60s, the business people were like, communism was just a red herring, and public opinion started to waver. Without a fascist communist threat looming over everyone's heads, big business was chomping at the bit. A movement arose that argued for better efficiency through economies of scale, proposing the idea that monopolies should only be busted if they harm the consumer with their business practices, such as artificially inflating prices or stifling innovation. However, this tenet that monopolies shouldn't harm consumers is pretty vague, because harm is difficult to measure and anti-harm is difficult to enforce. By the 80s, pro-big business and anti-antitrust Ronald Reagan was elected president, and well, here we are today. Antitrust laws haven't gotten too much attention in the decades since the Reagan administration, but tech companies have kind of brought that conversation back to the forefront. The debate tends to come down to whether or not it's better to have innovation via economies of scale, i.e., bigger monopolies that run more efficiently, or through a more competitive marketplace. Since the 50s, but more specifically since the 80s, conservatives that are traditionally for smaller government have argued that the government was getting too big and it was becoming too intrusive in business practices, disrupting and even obstructing whatever semblance we might have of a truly free, laissez-faire economy. But big business has a history of using the government to its advantage in this country. According to economist Milton Friedman, monopolies only exist in the first place because of government intervention. For instance, the government aids in their creation and growth by giving them legislative perks, such as limiting imports and exports on certain products or materials, waiving fees, that kind of thing. Milton's solution was to get rid of all the antitrust laws, but also to get the government out of those areas of business where it's still interfering. The tech industry has been at the forefront of a revival of antitrust enforcement, and the actions taken by Meta in cahoots with a Republican agency help build a case against capitalistic monopolies while also contradicting the idea that government shouldn't interfere with business. Zuck wants all the cake, but here are some things that you should think about. Should the government intervene with Zuck's ambitions, or should it let the free market decide the fate of Meta and TikTok? Is there even a free market to default to anymore? And can an argument be made to support the idea that tech monopolies are, in fact, harmful to their users?